Ladies and gentlemen, it is finally time. The Locked On Blue Jays trade deadline episode starts right now.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode of Locked On Blue Jays is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah, the right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. All right, everybody. So we've teed this up. We've talked about it. We've thrown some ideas around throughout the last few weeks heading into the trade deadline. And now we have Dallon Wilton with us to go over an entire breakdown of what could happen possibly with this team around the trade deadline. We've looked into rumors. We've looked into possibilities. We've looked into just some of our own thoughts. We've tossed some around sitting on the couch as well. So it's finally time. Let's get Carter in here. Let's get Dallon Wilton in here. And let's start sort of throwing her around a little bit, boys. How's it going?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Thanks for having me on again, fellas.
You'll love to see it. This is our World Series right here, boys. The biggest part of the season. Obviously, it's not exactly where every Toronto Blue Jays fan thought we would be. But here we are. The time we're filming this podcast, we are 9 games under 500. Not exactly where we want to be. But again, trade deadline. We are releasing this on Thursday. It will be part 1. Trade deadline is Tuesday. So we'll be coming at you with a bunch of content over the weekend when the trades start flying off the wall. But I guess we should start with this, just a general overview of just kind of where the Toronto Blue Jays are at. So Braden, I'll throw it back to you to start with that.
Yeah, and just before we get into that, I want to mention as well, you guys can follow us on Twitter, Braden5 Iwasco, Carter First 2 as well. Dallon, what's your Twitter handle as well?
Just Dallon Wilton.
Dallon Wilton, perfect and easy. As well, guys, Dallon, huge Blue Jays fan as well, our buddy. So we'd love to have him on. We love to be able to throw it, chuck it around with the boys. And he's a great voice on this as well. Looks into it, keeps up with all his Blue Jays information. So I just thought I'd throw that out there at the beginning. But Carter, you're right. Let's get into a little bit of this overview, I want to say, on the Toronto Blue Jays. This is where I start. This team is terrible this season. It hasn't always been this bad, and I don't think it will continue to be this bad. It's where do we go from here? What trades, what moves need to be made to make this team better? And in my opinion, and this is, again, my opinion, we're going to throw this around. We're going to let everybody say what their overviews are. Then we're going to have a little bit of discussion on it because we're all going to have slightly different versions of this. In my opinion, boys, the Blue Jays need help in the bullpen, and they need to get some power bats that can drive in runs. Now, I think in my head, I think Bichette makes a comeback next season. I think that Vlad can continue on his pace. I think Varsho's back can only go up from here. Some guys like George Springer, who had a terrible start to the year, can come back. They need to add to that lineup there. What I don't necessarily understand is when they talk about moving bullpen arms like Yimi Garcia, Trevor Richards, Chad Green, I don't understand this concept. To me, this concept is a little bit mind-boggling because that's a part of this team that needs to be better. So why move on from guys that will be good next year as well when this team can't, when it's going to be hard in free agency to replace guys like that? In my opinion, you need to move on from guys that are playing good this season and who you don't necessarily need going forward, like IKF or one of the catchers, sadly. And a lot of guys else. I mean, if a team wants to take somebody like Justin Turner, who's been good over his last bunch of games, maybe that can invoke some trades there. But boys, in my full opinion, my biggest pet peeve with every talk that's going on right now is that they want to move away from some of these bullpen arms to make trades. And I feel like the only reason they're doing that is to make trades. Carter, I'll send it to you for your overview before we sort of get to Dall's and then sort of into a little bit of discussion on these.
Yeah, you kind of said exactly what we need. My main concerns right now are we need an outfielder desperately right now. We have Daulton, Varsho, George Springer. Obviously, we have Kevin Kiermaier. But the news on Kevin Kiermaier, if you guys have not heard, he will be retiring at the end of the season. So whether he retires as a Toronto Blue Jay, whether he gets traded at the deadline, probably will end up signing with the Rays again to officially retire his number. But Kevin Kiermaier officially going into retirement. Does that impact his trade value? Will that impact where he goes? That is a possibility. But the overview is Bichette, obviously, has got a big question here. Vladimir are kind of the two main pieces that people are worried about being traded, whether they're going to leave, whether they're going to stay. For me, we've talked about this on the podcast numerous times. I think we all want Vladdy to stay. He has hit now 5 home runs in 6 games as the time we were filming this podcast. What more does this guy need to do for the Toronto Blue Jays? Bichette, obviously a down year, but he had led the AL in hits in 2021 and 2022. Has not had a season where he's hit below 290 other than this season. So that is another guy that I don't think should be moved at the deadline. But the way the Blue Jays season has gone, they got to move on from their expiring contracts. And again, that does require some bullpen arms to be moved. But that leaves the question of how is this bullpen going to look in the future if the Toronto Blue Jays are trying to retool for 2025? Chad Green's been rumored to leave. Trevor Richards has been rumored. Yimi Garcia. There's a ton of bullpen arms. There even was some stuff earlier on Jordan Romano that has kind of fallen through as Jordan Romano has been injured. But again, you move on from all these bullpen arms. You don't necessarily get a power bat from the bullpen arms. It is notorious throughout MLB history that you don't get a ton back for bullpen arms. So again, the free agency is going to be massive for this team. The trade deadline, we're going to have to see how this unfolds, whether they move on from guys like Danny Jansen. You maybe take a flyer on IKF. There's a bunch of different scenarios that could happen. Chris Bassitt, Kevin Gausman have even been rumored to be traded as well. So it's really up to Ross Atkins to see how he does deal with this trade deadline. And it's not a great spot for this Toronto Blue Jays team to be because Ross Atkins is on the hot seat. That has been known for a very long time. He's trying to save his job. So he's not going to commit to a full rebuild because he pretty much might as well fire himself at that point. So overall, this trade deadline is huge for the Toronto Blue Jays future, huge for this Toronto Blue Jays team success in the next upcoming years. And it's going to be interesting to see how Ross Atkins and the management lays this out for the future.
Yeah, Carter, you know what? It has been a little bit strange so far, not knowing what the direction of this team will be. And sorry, we're going to do a little bit of flip-flop, and that's going to happen. We want to try to make this sort of into a bigger production here, and this is just sort of the trials and tribulations of going through that. Dal, I want to throw it to you before we sort of open this up to a full sort of panel discussion here. So I'll send it back to you here quickly, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, no, I think you guys hit the nail on the head there. There's a lot that this team needs. And like you said, Braden, the bullpen, I mean, it has been better recently, but I think that's a weakness of this team for sure. So moving some of these guys would be questionable in a way. Like you said, guys like Yimi or even Trevor Richards, those are pieces that are valuable to you right now. So it'd be tough to part with those guys. I mean, Erik Swanson's came back after the All-Star break and looked good. I mean, I wouldn't mind trading him. I think he could be a good sweetener in a deal, maybe. But then it's like you guys said before as well. We need a power bat. I think if we're going to trade some of these guys, we're going to need a return. We're going to need a stud prospect in return. That's what's going to happen, and maybe even a young starting pitcher with a lot of promise.
So, Dal, as we sort of said, we're going to open up the floor here to have a little bit of a discussion, have a little bit just on the overview itself. We don't have to go into guys specifically just yet. We are going to get into that player by player, breaking it down of what we think is going to happen with some of the rumors that we've heard spilled around and a couple other things. But, boys, let's open it up. Discussion on some of the topics and maybe a little bit of the argument either way. Let's start with that bullpen, boys. The bullpen has been a question mark this entire season because nobody's really known. There's been injuries. There's been troubles. Nobody's really known what the direction will be for that. So I think let's just start there. Anything you guys have to say on this bullpen in particular? Will there be moves made? What's the direction if those moves do get made? Carter?
Let's take a step back first overall and make sure we're all on the same page at this point. The Toronto Blue Jays are 9 games under 500. So I just want to make sure everyone has the same thoughts here. I feel like this will be similar, but the direction of the Toronto Blue Jays. Are they going to buy? Are they going to sell? Are they going to hold? I'll throw it back to you, Dal. Where do you think this team should go with considering how this season has portrayed and laid out for the Toronto Blue Jays in 2024?
Yeah, I don't think it should be a full sell. I think there are pieces that you need to sell, given where you're at this season and also the contract situation. It's going to be really tough to see some of these guys go if they do, but it's like I said, really all I got to say is it's like I said before, there's pieces that need to stay and there's pieces that definitely need to go.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. And I'm on the exact same sort of thing. It's going to be a partial sell. I don't think that they're going to blow this team up. I don't think for their job security in and of itself, that can't happen. Otherwise, you're pretty much writing your will and testament as a manager or as, Ross Atkins, whatever. I think you're writing it in paper. You're putting it in the heads of everybody that you're done. You don't think that you can manage this team. So I think there's a lot to be talked about. But no, I think it's going to be a partial rebuild. Carter?
I think, for me, my biggest fear with this Toronto Blue Jays team, the way it sits right now, is they don't do anything. They have the classic Toronto Blue Jays deadline, and they just hold every single player. You hold on to Yusei Kikuchi, you hold on to Yimi Garcia, all these guys on expiring contracts, and you do absolutely nothing. You don't bolster the prospects. You don't get anything that will help this team for the future. This team has to sell their assets and get something in return for them while they still can. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of traction on re-signing guys like Yusei Kikuchi. This team doesn't really like to spend money on bullpen arms. That seems like it's a theme throughout the MLB. Not a lot of teams will go out and actually pay these bullpen arms because it's so wishy-washy every single year. Look at Tim Meza last year, one of the best relievers on the Toronto Blue Jays at like a 1.5 ERA. This year he has an 8 ERA and he is DFA'd, not even on the team anymore. So that is a huge reason why these bullpen arms are not going to be sold. But one thing I want to compare this Toronto Blue Jays team to is one team last year that bought when everyone was very surprised why they were buying. It made absolutely zero sense. The only thing that it made sense to me was you want to help out Shohei Ohtani. You want him to stay with your organization. And that was the Los Angeles Angels. A team that just didn't look very good. Had Anthony Rendon, who's just horrendous, just cannot stay healthy. Doesn't seem like he cares about playing baseball. Mike Trout, who's a great baseball player, one of the best to ever do it, but he can't really stay healthy. And at that point, the Angels were 56-51 when they bought. Obviously, it was not a very smart move. Again, I'll say it again. The Toronto Blue Jays, 55, 9 years below 500. In a different spot, it is a no-brainer that you have to sell some of these assets. If Ross Atkins decides to hold, that is just another reason to fire Ross Atkins for this team, for this team's future, for the team's future success. This should be a no-brainer. Ross Atkins, please make the right decision and actually sell some of these players.
Yeah, and that's going to be the question, right? Is if these guys will be sold, how many will be sold? We'll get into all of that coming up. Again, this is going to be a longer episode because there is a ton to talk about, and we want to be able to sort of throw it around and have these discussions where it's not so formulaic. We want to open up to the floor a little bit here. So, boys, let's toss it around a little bit. On this whole talk of the bullpen, I know we sort of touched on that, but do you think that this is the right move to trade some of these guys like Yimi Garcia, Trevor Richards, Chad Green? Let's start there, at least with those three, who the rumors have been swirling that these three guys will be moved. Do you guys, honest to God, think that this is the right decision?
I can speak on that. I could part ways with Trevor Richards and Chad Green. I would like them to keep Yimi Garcia because I think Yimi Garcia is someone that you could build around in the bullpen for sure. And even if you want to convert him to a closer, you could. I don't know if they should do that or will do that. But the other two are like, you got to think they're not guys that will be there much longer anyways. So Yimi Garcia is definitely someone they need to build around because he is one of the most elite pitchers in the MLB right now.
Yeah, for me, a huge thing for the Toronto Blue Jays is who actually has interest in signing for this team long-term, whether it's 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. If you know they are not going to come back, you might as well get value for them right now. You might as well get some assets in return. So for me, just looking at this bullpen, I'm just going to go through a brief overview of what we got going on right now. So Bowden Francis, again, maybe will be a starter next season. It kind of depends on what happens to the trade deadline. But I have Bowden Francis in the bullpen right now. Yimi Garcia is another piece. Chad Green, Nate Pearson probably won't be moved. Erik Swanson is a piece that could be moved. Trevor Richards, Henry Cabrera, don't really see that happening. Brendan Little, Ryan Burr, Jordan Romano, Zach Pop. A lot of these guys not going to have a lot of value anyway, so don't really see them moving on from them. The main guys that I kind of want to focus on are the guys that have talent, the guys that have a little bit of value. So Yimi Garcia, Chad Green, Erik Swanson can be thrown in there. Again, it's debatable if this guy has any value based off how his season has gone. But then you have Trevor Richards. I'm not going to throw Jordan Romano in there. I don't think that's fair. So you got 4 to 5 bullpen arms that could realistically be on the move this season. So for me right now, the way it is facing, I'm going against Dal here. I think they should move Yimi Garcia. I think that if you're going to package him with another player, that would be a very good idea. Every team that's going to compete is going to want more pitching. That's just how the MLB works. You have good pitching. Normally, you're going to be very successful. Obviously, in the Toronto Blue Jays sense, hasn't really worked out too well, but the bullpen's been horrendous this season. So that's one thing that you're going to have to kind of look at with this team is that if you do end up selling all of these bullpen pieces, you're going to be left with Nate Pearson being your 8th inning guy. Zach Pop will have to throw in the 7th inning. Is that something we're necessarily going to be comfortable with going into the next season? I'm definitely not. But again, you have the entire offseason to sign some bullpen arms. Maybe you get some guys coming up from AAA, but you got to hit on some diamonds in the rough. You got to get some guys that aren't necessarily these unbelievable players, and that's why you don't want to pay these relievers. You can find random guys kind of off the street, honestly, that will throw 95, 96, 97, and if they can locate and they can be efficient for a year, that's going to be very effective for this team. But for me, for the bullpen right now, really the only one I have is Yimi Garcia on the move. I think he's proven, like Dal said, to be one of the best pitchers right now, especially in the AL. A guy that will be very huge in high leverage situations for any team that does pick him up. I don't really see this being a one-off. I don't see it just a Yimi Garcia for a prospect. I think they're going to package him with another guy that I have moving at the deadline. But for me, Chad Green has a little bit of control. If you can get a good deal for Chad Green, wouldn't hate moving on from him. As I said in the other podcast, Trevor Richards might just love Canada because over his last 7 games, he has been horrendous with a 15 ERA. Does that drop his value? Maybe it does. It depends what teams are valuing at this point. Trevor Richards, that changeup is so disgusting. He has a very low batting average against, so another guy that can be effective, especially as a middle reliever, can go multiple innings. But for me, I just have Yimi Garcia as a big piece to be moved at this deadline. Today's episode is sponsored by Supply House. Get supplies from the site that's made for skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is the most reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get you a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. As you guys know, Game Time is one of our favorite apps we have on our phones here at Locked On Blue Jays. We used it to go to Toronto, book our tickets. They got their zone deals, their flash deals. It's so easy to use. They let you see the view from your seat, which makes it even better because we like to sit all around the ballpark when we go out for these weekends. So Game Time is the best way to do that. They have the last minute deals as well. I didn't mention those. The seat view is the lowest price guaranteed, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON MLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON MLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. When I look through this lineup, we did a little bit of for sure moving on, likely to go, a possibility, probably not, and for sure not leaving. And I talked about Yimi Garcia in this, and we will get into this. Yimi Garcia was a piece that I think was for sure going to be traded. I disagree with that move wholeheartedly. I think Yimi Garcia should be a guy, like Dallon said, that you can build around. You have to build around somebody in this bullpen. And I think Yimi Garcia is the best option to do that. Yes, I've loved the way that Chad Green looks. I would prefer to keep Chad Green as well. But I understand that moves have to be made. Things have to be done. I just don't necessarily know if moving bullpen pieces in general is a good option for this team right now. I think it's going to bite them next season when this bullpen continues to be bad because they weren't able to sign some guys in the off season. And that's happened many times before. There hasn't been enough done for that bullpen. But in saying that, yeah, I think Yimi Garcia is a very, very likely to be moved. I think Chad Green is definitely a possibility. He's been linked to the Yankees already. I don't know how. Again, take that with a grain of salt. All these rumors around this trade deadline, there's so much coming out. You got to take every information with a grain of salt. We're giving you guys sort of our look at this, and some of you are going to disagree with us. So make sure you guys drop a comment, shoot us a DM on Twitter, tag us in a Twitter post, Instagram, whatever. And we'll try to get in there and respond to all you guys. But looking at that again, Carter, I mean, I think we've done our recaps. We know we've said our piece about what they should do, who they should, where they should sort of allocate these trades to. Let's go into this list that I've talked about in the for sure going, the likely to go, the possibilities, the probably nots, and of course, the for sure nots. I think let's start with the who we think's for sure going. Dal, I'm going to pass it to you. Who do you have for sure being traded? You think 100% these guys are gone?
Yeah, a guy for me would be Kikuchi. I mean, he's one of the hardest throwing left-hand starting pitchers, and he's looked good at times this year. I mean, he can be very valuable for a team. He loves Toronto. I love him in Toronto. He's this year especially, but he's expiring contract, and he's not one of those guys that you can build around, like I was talking about earlier. Like, he's a good piece in your rotation, but for this team right now, he's got some value. I say he's going to get shipped out, and we're going to get a prospect or two maybe in return for that.
So just clearing up, Yusei Kikuchi is your only guy that you think 100% for sure he's gone?
No, not the only guy. I think Danny Jansen is going to leave. I think Justin Turner's gone. And I would say those are the only three that I think for sure are gone. Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair. Carter, I'll throw it to you before I get into mine. I have a little bit shorter of a list and a little bit of a different look, but Carter, I'll throw it to you for your for sure going.
Yeah. So for me, I got 4 players that I think for sure should go. And I obviously have Yusei Kikuchi as well. I think this one is an absolute no-brainer. He can make so many teams so much better. A left-hander that throws hard, like Dal said. So many teams are going to need that, especially down the stretch. A guy that probably could come out of the bullpen if you do have a deep starting rotation. But one fit that I do see Yusei Kikuchi going to is the Baltimore Orioles. Obviously, Kikuchi being a left-handed pitcher, a lot of teams are going to stack right-handed hitters against this guy. And Cavan Yards has a very long left field porch. So again, Yusei Kikuchi can challenge hitters. They can challenge these right-handed batters. If you're going to hit a pull side home run, you're going to have to get all of that baseball. Again, there's going to be this argument. Do you want to trade within the division? Baltimore Orioles have a massive prospect pool. They have 1 million prospects. Does that mean they're going to undervalue them? You got to hope so. But again, it's division rivals. So maybe that doesn't make as much sense. Another team that could use them is the Cleveland Guardians, kind of just bolstering that depth. The Houston Astros, another team. Minnesota Twins, a bunch of guys that are a bunch of players and teams that are rumored to be in on Yusei Kikuchi. A guy that just completely turned his career around with the Toronto Blue Jays. Obviously, in 2022, was one of the worst pitchers in all of the MLB. Pete Walker, whoever got in his year, Yusei Kikuchi was one of the best pitchers after the All-Star break last season. I think with Yusei Kikuchi, I have him being packaged with Yimi Garcia. Again, maybe the Baltimore Orioles. There's a bunch of teams that they could go to. Again, the speculation is crazy because Ross Atkins, you never really know what they're going to do at the trade deadlines with a bunch of random trades throughout the season. So I see a Yimi Garcia, Yusei Kikuchi package. Hopefully you get a decently highly touted prospect, maybe a top 10, top 5 in whoever system. I don't think this is a deadline that they necessarily get a lot of MLB talent. I think this is where you take chances on players that haven't necessarily proven themselves, whether it's prospects. And then if you want to get some MLB talent, I think you got to do that in free agency. There's a lot of free agents that will be available. But again, it depends where they want to go, who they want to give away. So I have Yusei Kikuchi and Yimi Garcia being a package deal. I think Justin Turner is another guy that I see going as well. Not necessarily going to net the greatest return, but this is a veteran guy that has done it before, has won a World Series, would be massive for a lot of teams' dugouts, especially teams that don't have a lot of experience. Again, going back to the Baltimore Orioles, I see this being a very good fit. A team that is not experienced in the playoffs. Again, wouldn't take a lot to get Justin Turner, him being 39 years old, not having the greatest year so far. That's going to take me into my last guy. And this one might come as a little bit of a surprise, but I have IKF. I think they should move on from IKF here. I love watching IKF play baseball. It's not that I don't like watching the guy at all. I think he's a great piece for this team. But just looking at IKF's career stats, this guy's a career 264 hitter. He's hitting 292. Has never had a season where he's hit above average for a WRC+. He's doing that right now. Again, the injury might tank his value a little bit, but is IKF going to continue this for the rest of the season? Is he going to be able to just sustain this career and these career numbers for the future, in the future for the Toronto Blue Jays? Is he going to be a part of this massive retool that they're planning on doing? I don't necessarily think so. I think you got to sell high on IKF, and he can go to a contender, definitely help with defense. He can help in the middle infield. If he's going to hit like this, any team could really use IKF. So for me, it's just those four. I think, again, if you can trade Kevin Kiermaier, I would love to see that. But with his retirement, nobody wanting him off waivers, I did have him on this list, and I kind of thought myself off the ledge here. Don't think he's going to get moved. So I just have those four players. If you can get a prospect haul, maybe major league talent, I'm leaning more towards prospects, unproven players, guys you want to take chances on. I think those four should be moved at this deadline.
Yeah, so I'm going to get into mine, Carter, and then you brought up a really good point on IKF, and I think let's have a little roundtable on IKF just after this. I only have two guys for sure that I believe are going to be moved, and that is Yusei Kikuchi, of course, been linked a little bit to the Minnesota Twins and the Baltimore Orioles. Those are the two I've seen the most, sort of scouring, doing sort of my digging. The next guy, of course, is Yimi Garcia. You, Carter, like the package deal idea. I don't necessarily know if that's going to be the play. But it's a possibility. And there's lots of possibilities that they could do with these two guys. And I think it really depends on which team that they choose to go with. I think some teams are going to want the package deal and some teams will not. Again, I want to say this out loud. I don't necessarily think that they should move on from Yimi Garcia, but I think it will happen. Just the way this management works. A guy that you guys both brought up is Justin Turner. I have him a little bit lower on this list. I don't have him in my for sure going category. I don't necessarily know what team wants to take a shot on a streaky hitter like Justin Turner, which he's proven time and time again that he is when his hots are hot, but his colds are very cold. And I don't necessarily know a team going into the playoffs want to take a shot on a hot and cold hitter like Justin Turner. But in saying that, Carter, you brought up IKF, and that's a guy that I really want to dig into. I did not have him as a for sure going. I didn't even have him as a likely to go. I had him as a possibility. I think that for this ball club, their number one goal should be to trade IKF. I think he has the most value, and he's a hitter that you can move on for and still replace him within the organization the rest of this season, going into next year. I think that is the perfect move for this team, is to deal IKF. In my head, I would love to put him in for sure going. That if I was Ross Atkins, he would be my number one move. But do I think it's going to happen? I don't know. I'm very worried with Ross Atkins running the ship here at this trade deadline. In my opinion, Ross Atkins should have been let go. Somebody new should have been brought in, and then they should have been able to retool, rebuild this team however they saw fit. I just don't think that Ross Atkins is going to make the right moves, especially on IKF, in the sense where he should be moved. He has been good this season, and I don't necessarily believe that we're going to get this production from him next season. And we have a lot of other tools that can be used in his place. I think IKF should 100% be moved. I really don't believe it. Dal, what are you thinking on IKF at all? Like, are you sort of agreeing with me? Are you sort of seeing where, Ross Atkins and the rest of everybody else are coming from?
Yeah, it's both those things. I mean, I'd have to kind of side with you more, but yeah, he's got value right now, so I don't see why you wouldn't dish him. But I wouldn't doubt if Ross Atkins sees him as a piece in this retool, given what he's produced so far for us. He's got one more year left on his contract after this, I believe, and he's 29 years old. He's going to play for quite a few more years, and if he can keep this up, this is a guy that would be valuable to our team right now. But like you said, I don't think he's going to keep it up. So while his value is the highest it's probably been, I would give him away for sure.
Well, and just looking at IKF, a big reason that I think he's been so much better as a hitter this season is he made an adjustment in the middle of the season. He used to have this bigger leg kick, and now he's gone to more of a slide step. He's been pulling a lot more baseballs, hitting a lot more baseballs hard, and that's obviously how you're going to produce hits. If you hit the baseball hard, you hit it on the line, it's probably going to work out pretty well for you. So with IKF, I wouldn't mind seeing this guy stay with the Toronto Blue Jays. I think he can be better than his career average. I just think the way the Toronto Blue Jays system is going, you have, like Braden said, you have multiple players that can replace IKF. Are they going to produce the same defense, the same offense? Probably not, but you have Leo Jimenez, who has looked very good. Ernie Clement, I would not have a problem seeing him start the rest of the season. Yes, maybe you have to bolster third base or a shortstop, but then you do have Bichette, obviously, to play that shortstop position as well. You got Spencer Horwitz, who has looked very good at second base. You can rotate him at first base as well. Obviously, Vladdy would be a first baseman. You do have multiple options for this infield. That's why I like the IKF move. I think if you can trade him to a contender, even just trade him anywhere where you do get prospects in return, I think that would be very beneficial for this Toronto Blue Jays team and their future.
Yeah, so we've talked a little bit about the likely to moves. I want to get into, or the for sure goings. I want to get into the likely to moves as well. Again, this is sort of going to be a little bit of a two-part episode that we release either Monday or Sunday if anything happens. We wanted to get the guys that we assumed will be moved out of the way first, just in case anything happens. But let's move into the likely to moves.
Before we do that, can I just get quickly going to Justin Turner? I think another thing with Justin Turner that would be great for the Toronto Blue Jays team is you're not necessarily going to get the biggest haul for him. But again, Justin Turner's 39 years old. He has played through the prime of his career. Do you really want this guy taking away at-bats for anyone on this Toronto Blue Jays team? You got guys, like I said, Leo Jimenez. He's just a hole in his DH spot right now. You can have Addison Barger hitting that DH spot. You can have Leo Jimenez. You can have I was going to say Elvis Martinez, obviously not going to happen right now. Spencer Horwitz, you can have Vladdy having DH at-bats, giving Spencer Horwitz more opportunity at first base. I think the main goal of this team for the rest of the season, obviously they're probably not going to make a playoff push. That would blow all of us away, and it would be very interesting if this team sold at the trade deadline and somehow got better in the rest of the season. I definitely don't think that's going to happen, but Justin Turner is just clogging up a roster spot right now, and he has value on other teams with that veteran presence. I think you got to prioritize your younger players, prioritize getting them in the MLB for these little reps that don't necessarily matter. Takes the pressure off them a little bit. I want to see what these Buffalo boys can do. I want to see what our prospects have. And then that can set you up for the offseason. You can see, hey, is Leo Jimenez going to be a piece that can be beneficial for this team? Is Addison Barger going to be able to hold his own defensively? Is he going to be able to catch fire at the plate? There's so many what-ifs on this team with our young prospects. So I want this opportunity, these last 60-ish games, to be an ability for these young players to showcase their talents.
I don't think that's a crazy thought. That's honestly in my head what I had in mind is a lot of these guys are just clogging up the roster. I think you put that pretty bluntly, and as you should, because that's exactly what's happening. They want to play Justin Turner. They're trying to give him at bats, and he's taking advantage of them in some situations. But he's, like we talked about, so hot. So when he's hot, he's hot. When he's cold, he's so cold. This is a guy that I think a lot of teams might like. I don't necessarily know if I was another team and we acquire Justin Turner through a trade. I don't think I'm very thrilled about that as a fan. Just in the sense of that when he's very hot, he's hot. And when he's very cold, he's cold. And if you get him on a cold streak going into the playoffs, and he's a guy that you might be maybe not relying on, but you want him to play well, and he's going 0 for 4 at the dish every night, I don't think that's something I would really be super thrilled about as another team's fan. As we sort of move forward here, Dal, do you have anything sort of before we move on here about Justin Turner?
Yeah, this might be out of left field, but I think I see him making a return of the Dodgers, honestly. I don't see why not. Me personally, I think this is his last year of baseball. I think he'll retire after this season. So why not reunite with the squad that sorry, boys, the squad that brought you up, like, or made you a star, if you want to say. I mean, it wouldn't hurt them to get his bat and that presence that he's been there before. He's won there before. I don't see why he wouldn't make a return of the Dodgers. I don't see why they wouldn't go get him, honestly.
That's a bold take. We'll have to see what Dodgers fans, if there's any Dodgers fans that see this, tell us what you think about that, because that is an interesting take. Dal, I honestly didn't even think about that myself, but him making that return to a playoff lineup that's looking to win, it could be a possibility, even if you, like you said, for that presence of I've been here before, I've done it before, and he's a guy that we've seen help out other batters when they're at the dish. You know, he's showing them things. He's telling them things. This might be a piece that could help a lot of lineups in that situation. But in saying that, I think we thought that going into this year for our guys, and it really hasn't worked. It really hasn't. As good as he was, he helped Davis Schneider for a bit there. He was looking really good, but then he's fallen off a cliff again this year.
Yeah. As a Dodgers fan, though, I don't see how you could be upset with bringing him back. I mean, he's a guy that did a lot for the Dodgers, and obviously you're not going to give up really anything for him. So if I was a Dodger fan and I got Justin Turner back, I'd be not ecstatic, but I'd be happy to see him in that uniform again.
Yeah. Sorry, Carter. I'll come back to you there.
Okay. So for me with Justin Turner, like it would make sense. They do need our utility hitter. Like James Ottman has not been good. Gavin Lux isn't amazing either. Chris Taylor. The only problem with Justin Turner is you have one of the best hitters in baseball in Shohei Ohtani as your DH. And as we've seen as Toronto Blue Jays fans, Justin Turner cannot play the infield. So again, it's just for me, the only problem with that is where do you hit Justin Turner in your lineup? You can't have him at DH. Maybe you put him at first base, but you have Freddie Freeman, who is, again, one of the best players in all of baseball at first base. So you can test him out at third, but again, that scenario has not really worked out for them. Again, veteran presence, it would work very well for that. If you can get him somehow in the lineup, maybe you get Shohei Ohtani to play first base. I'm not sure what the fix would be there, but I'm pretty sure with his arm and Tommy John, they don't want him throwing the baseball too often. So that is my only problem with that. Again, you can't go wrong with veteran presences. You're not going to give up a lot, as you said, Dal. But for me, I just don't necessarily see where Justin Turner would fit in that lineup.
Yeah, that's a fair point, Carter. Today's episode also brought to you by Booking.com. As you guys know, Booking.com helped me make my travel plans when we went out to Toronto, when we went out to New York, and we're going down to Minneapolis at the end of the summer, so it will help me there as well. With summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you've always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yes, we're talking about your rival cities, just like when I went down to New York. Didn't really want to watch the baseball team play, but New York is such an iconic city, and Booking.com helped me have a great time there. With hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay even in your baseball rival cities. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com, on the site, or in the Booking.com app.
Today's episode is also sponsored by Prize Picks. Up to this point, I've watched pretty much every single Toronto Blue Jays game. When I watch the Jays games with my friends, we always find ourselves predicting the next outcome in at-bats, whether it's a strikeout, a hit, a home run, especially a Vladdy home run recently. But we always make these little wagers, but Prize Picks gives me the opportunity not just to prove myself to my friends, but to make some money off my picks as well. Don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond into your Prize Picks entries. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs, take your pick of more than or less than and add them to your Prize Picks entries today. Prize Picks is very simple to play. I can make my picks and submit my entries in as little as 60 seconds. I've been on a little bit of a cold streak. I'm hoping I can turn that around. Again, I've kind of become the fade god on this podcast. So if you want to keep fading me, go for it. Or if you want to ride with me, I definitely appreciate that too. But if you know which players are going to perform on specific nights, this is a no-brainer. Download Prize Picks and start making your picks today. You can download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit matchup to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit matchup to $100.
And you know what? I want to get into these likely to moves. We've talked about the for sure to moves, who we think is 100% going to be leaving this team before this trade deadline does hit on Tuesday. Moving into the likely to, boys, I'm going to start us off here because you guys did have a little bit more than me in the for sure going. And again, this might come back on me. I only have two guys that are likely to go. And then I have a couple more in the possibility section. But in the likely to go, I have Trevor Richards and Chad Green, two guys that I don't necessarily think. I don't know for Trevor Richards necessarily if this team is going to get what they're looking for a trade with him. And they might just bite the bullet and keep him moving forward. And I don't honestly think that that's a bad idea. I think if you have him as your seventh inning guy who maybe could push 2 innings some games, I think that's a great spot for Trevor Richards, who going into next season, we need a guy that can do that. So I don't hate keeping him. I think if the price is right for Trevor Richards, then I totally understand letting him go. I think I'd rather see him go than Chad Green or Yimi Garcia. But in saying that, I also have Chad Green here as well in the likely to go. And just because this team wants to unload pieces and for some ballistic reason, they want to let their bullpen arms go. I don't understand this. I will never understand this. But as far as I've heard, the Yankees are interested. There's other teams interested in Chad Green as well. And this is a guy that I could just definitely see not being with this team next year and not being with this team post-trade deadline either, boys.
Yeah, for me, I actually have the exact same list as you for that. I have Chad Green and Trevor Richards. For me, I see Chad Green as being the piece that's probably more likely than Trevor Richards to go, as he has been linked to the Yankees. Again, the Yankees bullpen right now is absolutely horrendous. Aaron Judge has been out and said that Chad Green has been one of the best teammates that he's ever had. So Chad Green, a little bit more value in that because he does have another year of control as well. With Trevor Richards, I wouldn't hate the Blue Jays keeping him. I think they are going to shop him around. They're going to see what they can get for him. But I think you're right, Braden. I think it's going to be an underwhelming return for Trevor Richards. I don't think they're necessarily going to get what they want for Trevor Richards. When you look at Trevor Richards, you probably think this guy is like 35, 36, but he's only 30 years old. So again, if the Blue Jays re-sign him to a 2-year deal, a guy that can pretty much pitch wherever in this bullpen. He's gone out and been an opener. He's gone out and done long relief. He's gone out and done high leverage, 7th, 8th inning. I don't necessarily love him in high leverage. I think he's better off in the lower leverage situations to eat up innings and maybe get you a strikeout in a big spot. But Trevor Richards, again, I can see them moving. I don't necessarily love the move for Trevor Richards. I see Chad Green as being a more realistic scenario here, and he's just going to net you more return. So Baltimore Orioles, another team that could use another bullpen arm. The Baltimore Orioles are going to be a team that we probably bring up quite a bit in this episode. The New York Yankees as well, if we're talking about bullpen arms. Then the Los Angeles Dodgers, two teams. The Dodgers and the Orioles are going to be in on so many players. Obviously, they're linked to Tyreek Skubal as well. Definitely can't give up a player of that caliber with this Toronto Blue Jays system. But for me, I have Trevor Richards, Chad Green. Chad Green being the more obvious one to go, probably going to net you more return. But I only have those two players as well as Braden.
Sending it over to you, Dal. Who do you got in this likely to move, but not a for sure sort of category we have here?
Yeah, I got 4 guys actually. I'm not going to comment on Trevor Richards and Chad Green because you said everything we needed to about that. But one guy in my thing is Erik Swanson. I don't think he's going to stick around. Carter said was talking about package deals. I think he's someone you throw in there, and I mean we've talked about as well how bullpen arms are so hit or miss. He may have been bad the first half of the season in the big leagues and in the minor leagues, but this is a guy who's proved that he could pitch. So I don't see why he couldn't turn around, especially for, a ball club that needs bullpen arms. And then last on my list here is I actually think that Chris Bassitt will be moved. He's getting paid a lot and he's 35 years old. And like I've talked about before, it's not some guy that you're going to build your starting rotation around. Yes, he can throw a lot of pitches for you. He's also that veteran presence in your starting rotation, but trading him would mean that we could free up, a bit of space on our payroll and maybe in the off season have a little more room to sign some more guys.
Carter, I'm throwing it to you. I saw your face on the Chris Bassitt one. I know that is something that we've had a couple conversations about. What do you think about Chris Bassitt?
Chris Bassitt is one of those players that would net you a good return. And Chris Bassitt has the type of pitching style that he's only throwing 90, 92. So he's probably going to last longer than your typical starting pitcher. A guy that has shown that he can done it at pretty much any level, any level with any team in any division, in any conference, in the AL or the NL, has success pretty much wherever he goes, can adapt to situations. He has pitched on 4 days rest. He's pitched on 6 days rest. You can really pitch in any scenario. And a guy that is, if you want return, he's going to net you a big return. I don't care how old Chris Bassitt is. He does have another year on his contract as well. Would be a huge bolster to any team. A good middle arm that will probably be a number 3, maybe even a number 2 on some teams. Chris Bassitt, I don't have him necessarily in this list. I don't hate it though, because Chris Bassitt, if any of the pitchers other than Yusei Kikuchi are going to get moved, I see it being Chris Bassitt. Jose Berrios for me is like, you have so much term on that contract, doesn't really make sense. Kevin Gausman might be another guy we bring up in this podcast, but I don't hate the Chris Bassitt move. If you can find a good team that's going to give you a haul back, I'm not going to hate it because you do have Alek Manoah hopefully coming back this next season. You got Ricky Tiedemann, you got Bowden Francis, who you can throw in there. Wyrod is just turning into one of the greatest pitchers I've ever seen. But if you can catch fire, if you get some of these younger guys to keep throwing, Chris Bassitt on the move wouldn't be the worst thing that I've seen.
Sorry, Dell, I'm just going to ask you, who is the other guy you said for this list as well?
Erik Swanson.
Erik Swanson, that's right. That's who I wanted to go into. You know what? I don't think that's completely out of left field. I think the package deal idea for Erik Swanson, I think teams still see the value in him. As bad of a season as he has had, I think there's a lot of value to be had in Erik Swanson. Some people are going to hate that take, but he was so good last season that I think he's got value. And I think that some teams might see that and might pick up on that and want to move him. And I think they might catch the Jays sleeping a little bit on what Erik Swanson brings to the table. And that's what I'm a little bit terrified of, Dal. Honestly, I don't have him in this list on mine, but I can totally understand why you brought that up. And I honestly think that's a great point and maybe a little bit of a sleeper here at this trade deadline, Dal.
Yeah, like this was our 8th inning guy last year, and he pitched pretty good for us. So I think this kind of mess up he's had this season is a fluke, and I think he's got, like you said, a lot of value left. I think he can be really good in the bullpen.
Okay, guys, so just, this is going to wrap up part 1. We have so much more to get into. You will see the next part out on Monday, the day before the trade deadline. This episode will be out. Hopefully, some of these guys haven't left, so hopefully some of them have. Whatever you guys think, drop them in the comments below. I did want to say, we know the Toronto Blue Jays got the win yesterday, but I'm sorry. We're at the point of the season where these games don't matter. Realistically, they're out of the playoffs. We would have done a huge breakdown, but there's much more pressing stuff going on in Toronto Blue Jays land, like the trade deadline. And this was scheduled as our trade deadline day. And I think it's important that we cover it and we get our opinions and thoughts out there to you guys. And we want to know what you guys think. So post-trade deadlines, you can tell us if you were right, if you were wrong. We want to hear it all. So make sure that you guys are right tuned in for your Blue Jays knowledge here at Locked On Blue Jays. And I hope that you guys tune in for Monday's episode as well. Tomorrow, we have the episode with Johnny from Gate 14. It's coming out. We're talking to him about the trade deadline a little bit, some of his thoughts on the team, where they can go forward. That's going to be a super fun episode. And yeah, guys, tune in for part 2 Monday. Thanks a bunch. Drop a subscription if you're new here to the channel. Thanks a bunch.